our interest as a program, my personal interest is always very much for fields that we don't know so well. So it's also curiosity for things that move somewhere without us understanding why or how or what kinds of people do that or where's it going. So this need to be surprised, to encounter things or people or practices that we don't really get yet is an important motor for the program. And this transcendent
Welcome to Subtext and Discourse Art World podcast, demystifying the industry through interviews with artists, curators, gallerists, collectors, and other contributors to the field. I'm your host, Michael Dooney. This week, I'm speaking with Freo Majer, the founder and director of Forcast, a mentorship platform and festival that will celebrate its 10th anniversary next year in 2025. If you're involved in any manner of creative pursuit, whether it be visual arts, design, architecture, or music, Forcast is a program you'll want to learn more about. I want to briefly remind everyone to please subscribe to Subtext and Discourse wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and share the program on social media. It helps more people discover the show and promote the guests who share their insights. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Freo Majer. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk with you again. It was good to see you in, was it July that I was in Berlin?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, so I saw you before the August presentations of the festival. You are the founder and artistic director of Forcast, which on the website is described as a platform dedicated to facilitating, mentoring, and promoting trailblazing creative practices and audacious artistic practitioners. But I thought before we jump into talking about the platform, the mentorship, the festival, and the kind of universe that's around that, maybe let's hear a little bit about yourself. How did you come to starting this?
So basically, when I was a kid and thinking about what I could, become or work, it was all about expressing wishes of doing something, inventing stuff by artistic means. So as a kid, I would paint and sing and play theater and write stories and do random stuff that I really loved, like building, Lego. And so when I grew up, I thought more and more about combining different practices. And after high school, I thought about becoming either a playwright or a film director, or and by the way, visual artist was also on the plate. And so I landed studying opera direction in a music conservatory in Berlin. I was one of the first West Germans studying still kind of East Berlin, although the wall had fallen, of course, in the early 1990s already. That was kind of my super exciting, sometimes shocking experience in learning a practice or a profession that I really didn't know much about, and especially this East German tradition of theater directing and opera directing that was very much influenced by Bertolt Brecht. May also be a name that people outside Germany may have heard, who's extremely important for German theater and directing and artistic aesthetics, I would say. And so anyways, after some years of practicing as an opera director, I became more and more confused and unhappy and felt very lonely and even isolated. And it may have been also about myself, but partly I think it was my despair based on the experiences in institutions, like the inhibitions, the hierarchy, the bureaucracy, which may be even harder in German-speaking countries, I don't know. But I didn't see it anymore as an artistic work so much. And so I came up with the question, what could I be? And basically, I then started a program in Zurich. It's called Executive Master in Arts Administration, that at the time was extremely international, really exciting, with all kinds of professors from all art fields and, politicians and marketing experts and lawyers and whatever kinds of practice may be helpful for founding an arts institution. And there I came up with this concept. So building up a mentorship program for, it's not necessarily beginners in the sense of young people, but beginners in something, people that want to test something, want to learn and need some support, encouragement, a framework to develop their ideas. And so that's what I wanted to do when I had finished this master program in Zurich. And I became the founder and now artistic director of this mentorship program called Forcast that we've been doing for 9 years already, since 2015. That's
Yeah.
my personal story.
And did you have the idea before you went to study this master in Zurich, or it kind of evolved out of the studies?
So actually, it is really ridiculous, but I know exactly when I had this idea, and I know the space and the moment and the situation. It was in the middle. I mean, it was in the first year of that class in Zurich. We learned that we would have to attend a workshop. It's always 3 days. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is one block of learning, one topic, so to speak. In this case, was about festivals. And I learned that I would have to prepare a concept for a festival with half a year of preparation. So on one of these weekends in Zurich, I was invited by a fellow student, and it was a party basically in her apartment. And I was sitting on the sofa, and all of a sudden, it's totally ridiculous, but all of a sudden, sitting on that sofa with this music and these wonderful people around me, I had this idea that I want to do this thing with mentors and, more established people promoting younger or, let's say, beginning creatives. And it was a bit different in the beginning. It was 12 fields instead of 6 that now. And, the process wasn't clear at all. But the core idea, combining an experienced creative with somebody at the start of their career, was that moment developed.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful colleagues, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so nice that you have a time and a place that you can...
Yeah, it is so rare.
Yeah, when the thing came about.
But in this case, I know the moment.
So you just said now that you had 12 mentors at the start. Was there like some kind of mentorship experience that you had, I guess, in your formative years that you felt like this could be a beneficial thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, when I started my career, I was really very unhappy and felt as if nobody else would ever understand what I was planning to do or what I wanted to do. And so then I was recommended to attend a master class by a very famous director, her being a student of Bertolt Brecht. So I'm kind of to the generation of Bertolt Brecht. And when I attended this master class, I was extremely impressed and I found her absolutely incredible. Every single word that she said resonated so much with me, and I wanted to learn everything and, work with her always. And so she became my mentor then. She kind of caught an interest in me and really promoted me very much, invited me to assist her in some productions and to learn from her as a student as well in these master classes. And later, by the way, even in Zurich, in this program, I also met my second and equally important mentor, also a very impressive, very wise and warm-hearted woman. So the first one was a theater person, a director, and the second was a cultural politician. Very influential politician in Germany, also because not so many politicians want to do culture. It's very rare. Yeah. Some people rather stumble into that field without even knowing why or why them. And in that case, Barbara Kisseler was, she died, unfortunately. Both of them have died in the past years. Was an extremely helpful person. Yeah, and this project's development in my own career, and she encouraged me very much and also brought me together with some institutions. And, when she would say, this project is interesting, please listen, people would really open their doors and take some time to, to hear what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So in the first stages then, how did you win over the mentors and the other participants to get it off the ground?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's difficult to describe from the inside. I mean, maybe I'm not super objective, but I would say that a big part of the method or so was just my trying out whether it would work. So I would basically always put everything on the table and say, we have never done it before. We want to give it a try. This is the idea. We think that artists or creatives more in general deserve support and visibility and a warm-hearted and generous person to be by their side. And could you imagine to do it? And how I found these people was rather promoted by all my mentors and advisors, like this culture politician and some artistic partners that I had as a director who I trusted very much. So basically it was like a collage of different recommendations and some, attempts of getting in touch with them. It was a lot of luck, I would say. And I think, honestly, many of these people really remembered how they may have felt in their careers, in their early careers. So also a certain helplessness or isolation or cluelessness or whatever it is. And they really wanted to do it. They really understood the importance and how it could change something. And so it wasn't so difficult to win over people once I was in the situation to talk to them, I have to say. I mean, the responses were generally very positive and very welcoming. I mean, when it comes to time, then of course it's a different question. Like, do I have time enough to engage? And when is it exactly? And how much time would I have to invest? These questions may become a bit more tricky, but in general, I can't remember one person that ever said, I don't get the concept. What do you want? Go away. Some people said I never did anything like it, of course, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a really unique concept. And I think when we first spoke about it, like, I think your enthusiasm about it is also quite infectious. And when I've told other people since we met, they're like, wow, I would love to do that. That sounds so amazing.
Nice. Yeah.
But at the beginning then, because what I've noticed over the years, looking back over the mentors, is there's no fixed medium or discipline that is showcased throughout. So you've got visual artists and painters, photographers, then there's also performance and music, but then architecture and design. Was there a conscious decision just to say any kind of creative expression or?
So I would say generally, with my personal background as an opera director, I didn't feel that I could contribute so much knowledge or so much of a network, actually, because, I mean, our name is Forcast also because we believe that creative practices can lead somewhere or give certain outlooks or can say something about, I wouldn't necessarily say a future, but some paths to take or some potential perspectives or views or so. And anyways, we think that these people, as they're still kind of young, are the future and will build a certain future, whether you like it or not. It is, the generation alone means something connected to the future. Yeah, generally, I would say our interest as a program, my personal interest is always very much for fields that we don't know so well. So it's also curiosity for things that move somewhere without us understanding why or how or what kinds of people do that or where's it going. So this need to be surprised, to encounter things or people or practices that we don't really get yet is an important motor for the program. And this transdisciplinarity generally is just something really fascinating because not everybody can do it and not so many do it anyway. It's not so many institutions.
Yeah.
It's usually there is a certain focus on either architecture or visual arts or music or so. And of course, many creatives want to do more and want to connect to completely different practices, but it's really not organized more systematically very often. And I can say it's a lot of work. It's not natural in that sense. It's not built in institution. It's not built in careers. It's not built in education. It's always something that you really need to work for very hard and we really need to insist on doing. Otherwise, it won't happen. And it's more expensive than dealing with one discipline or one field. We don't even use the term discipline because it doesn't make any sense to us. But obviously, it's much easier and cheaper and more pragmatically an easier path to combine practices that are more related or more used to collaborate.
Yeah, because I noticed when I checked some of the earlier editions to the later ones, the earlier editions you would say like filmmaker or photographer, and the kind of the more recent ones, people are described in terms of their, let's say, their philosophy or their outlook and more about their approach. And their medium is less important than how they interact and do things.
Yeah. I think we started with edition 3 or even 2. We asked the mentors to really find a field, like a name or a title for their field. So in one of the first editions, for example, one artist that works very much with spatial installations and sculpture, and in those spaces, sometimes performative aspects or performative elements, she would call her field living matter, which I found so much more interesting than, sculpture or performance or space stuff or so. And since then, it has become a really exciting field of very distinct and very personal descriptions of these fields by only a few words, right? Like 2 or maximum 4 words or so. Place Beyond Fear is one of the fields of this year's edition. And Yeah, sometimes it's very much about philosophical ways of thinking, about the personality of the mentor, a specific interest in certain forms or in certain practices, but it's never here you can learn photography, or if you're an architect, please go here. That is not the case.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit. I did a masterclass years and years ago with the lighting designer Howard Branston. I think he's probably most famous for lighting the Statue of Liberty in New York. But during the masterclass, he talked as much about philosophy and seeing things and thinking about things as he did about lighting. And he even said there were projects that he was commissioned to be a part of, not as a lighting consultant, but as like a point of view to say, we like how you think. So we would like you here as part of this project to kind of inject a different way of seeing. And I think that kind of resonates with how the Forcast is structured.
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed watching the recap of this year's presentations that you noted that Toma Hyman, the documentary filmmaker, this was the first time in 9 years that you had a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always wanted to. So I had reached out to some documentary filmmakers before, and I made several attempts already in former editions, and it never worked out. I mean, sometimes it was merely about schedule and, other commitments and so, but sometimes it was also about the question, what can I do within this program? Because for a film production, and especially documentary film, where you don't necessarily have, the script set in stone, but you have to follow reality and see how things develop in reality. And you never know when the film will be ready and when something interesting happens or so, in many cases at least. And so some of these documentary filmmakers would ask me, how can I contribute to a process in this short amount of time and with this little money?
Yeah.
What can people present? I mean, we actually never use the word presentation for our events because we always say it's not about simulating or having a product or something. It's rather about inviting into a conversation, like letting people know what you're thinking about and what you want to do. And we really want to make sure that everybody in their own practice does exactly what they want to do and uses the exact material and exact media that they need or that they feel nice with. So I think documentary filmmaking in many cases, it's on one hand, it may be about the pressure by the industry, the grants, the festivals, who funds what and why and which kind of timeline. And on the other hand, the material that is kind of unpredictable and super rich and wild and moving somewhere. So some filmmakers said they were interested but didn't really know how to do it. Maybe I also needed some more time to think about it and to gather other experiences with kind of related practices. So, I mean, we had many, many video artists, for example, almost every year. And sometimes they also work with, elements from reality, like just being somewhere with a camera. And also some other practices, of course, use documentary elements a lot. And so when I was recommended to get in touch with Toma Hyman, I was extremely excited. I was not sure how he would use this framework, right? So on one hand, as a mentor, you need to see something. You want to see a quality or maybe a personal style or a personal approach or so. And on the other hand, you want to see that you're kind of needed. So the project may not be ready. And it was exciting to see in this case that Toma really wanted to make sure that all of these 3 nominees that he had to pick for the Forcast Forum in July, August, few weeks ago, that each of them would really benefit even from this early stage already. And so he said, well, I'm really very experienced in editing. And so I will edit a teaser for each of you. And so they would really sit there and edit an incredible teaser. Like now we have 3 fascinating teasers or trailers for those 3 documentary film endeavors. And after this week, they really came out with this fantastic material that they really can use now for their fundraising, for example, to be invited up by a festival with a project. And so on one hand, it's very speculative and playful and unpredictable. On the other hand, it's also about craft, and what to use, how, and how to prepare which kind of material. And that was really impressive. So documentary film has turned out an incredible
Oh, wow.
win
Sounds
for
like
us.
it's raised the bar a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think we've said actually how the process works. So we've said, so there are mentors.
So basically, each edition starts with 6 mentors that we approach. It's always a new cohort of mentors that never know each other. I mean, so far, at least, they had never met before. And 6 very different personal approaches and also different fields. And we always aim to have a festival at the very end of each edition that has different ways or offers different ways of perception, like speaks to different senses. It's not only intellectual with words or discourses, but also speaking to the body or the ears or whatever. Sometimes it's about food or smelling or listening or all kinds of perception. Then we have these 6 mentors on board, and they will then produce 6 very personal little videos. It's like an introduction, who they are, how they see themselves as artists or creatives, what they are currently working on or thinking about, or what they find important in their practice. And this is also very, very up to them how to do it, how to express themselves, how much to reveal, and with what kinds of media, how much to show of their former works, for example, or rather to use it as portrait. And the second part of these videos is all about the mentorship, like how do they describe themselves as mentor? How do they understand the role? What do they want to experience, or what would they offer? What they want to bring into the game? And this is also kind of the invitation to apply. So some of them also say, if you're interested in me, please apply, or if you work on similar topics or so. It is important for us that the mentors never express a motto, title, a subject, or anything. They can only express their own preferences or their own style, but this does not mean that only people can apply that are similar or that can fulfill something that the mentor would expect. So it is important that the mentees, when they apply, define the topics, the practices, the questions they have, and also what they want to get out of this mentorship, what they expect from the mentorship. And then we go online. So in January, we go online with the relaunch of the website, offering the next edition with this cohort of 6 mentors. Then people can apply for some weeks, and the mentors sift through their individual proposals. Then they have a short list of 7 to 10, usually, people that they meet online for a very short meeting to get a first rough personal impression from each other. The applicants can ask questions to the mentors and vice versa. And then after that, each mentor chooses 3 from the shortlisted people to come to Berlin in July, August for 1 full week for the so-called Forcast Forum. And so, of course, we prepare with them in a bunch of calls, like what they want to do in Berlin, how they want to structure the week, what they want to do either as group or individually, and also how much activity with the other fields they may want to have, which we very much encourage. And then basically the week in July or August, the forum is full of rehearsing, editing, playing around with material, space. It's a lot of experiencing each other, experiencing the city and the spaces at Radialsystem. And it's very practical. It's not just talking and thinking, but some of them also really need to think a lot and they may not talk that much. So it's very personal how everybody uses these days, but it's very energetic. Basically, everybody opens up enormously and becomes really very curious what the other people are doing. There's a lot of surprising parallels, interesting questions coming up. Of course, everybody wants to do their work, like their project, and wants to bring it to fruition. And so there's also kind of, this tunnel vision sometimes, so this excitement or nervosity. And at the end of that week, we open the house. So the Radialsystem will become a public venue again for the Berlin audience. And for 3 full days, we show all those 18 proposals. None of them usually just speculates in theory, but all of them spread out material. So it's like concerts, screenings, installations, conversations. It's very experimental and experiential and playful and wild, and everybody feels an enormous excitement. And it's not ready, and nobody should pretend to present it ready, result or an end of something, but it's rather like inviting people to be part of this development. And still, it's an audience. They buy tickets. And so there's also this kind of pressure from the perspective of the actors to show to an outsider, right? To an audience that you don't know before. And then after this week,
that's
everybody...
I didn't...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I didn't realize until you just said it now that all of their proposals are actually works in progress.
Totally. Yeah. All the time. And many of the applicants later tell us, I mean, when we meet, they tell us that they had an idea like for some months or years, and they never really found a way to further develop it, or they didn't find the right framework or support or so. And then when they hear about those mentors, they become very much encouraged to really try things that haven't yet worked or that are a bit more audacious or more distant from the usual practice, something that you may need another knowledge or methodology for. And so some of them really start developing really from the moment when they read the open call, and like they imagine a conversation with the mentor, because the mentor's video is like an invitation to converse, right? And so the application is like a response to this first part. And so if it goes on, then you have a very deep and kind of mutual exchange and process of questioning each other and supporting and bringing up new ideas along the way.
Oh, so then the mentors and mentees are liaising from January until they present in July, August.
So after the mentors pick the 3 nominees, this is always in April, like mid-April or so. We have regular calls with us, with the Forcast team, to make sure that everybody gets what they need and that everybody can discuss the format of the Forcast forum in summer. But very often they have other, let's say, more informal ways of exchanging. Like sometimes they send each other texts or WhatsApp or whatever. So they may have much different ways of exchanging that we don't always participate in. It's not important for us. If they need us, we'll always be there. But sometimes it's really very much about the artistic exchange. And so we don't know all the details. And it's also a question how much a mentor wants to engage before selecting the final mentee, because that is the next step that happens after the Forcast forum. So after these 18 nominees and the 6 mentors all travel back into their home countries, it's really about the decision, because we cannot produce 18 works, but only 6. That is just a practical limit. And so from the 3 pre-chosen nominees, each mentor has to pick one, which is really, I would say, the only moment when it becomes a little bit more serious and more final. And so far it worked pretty well, I would say. We make sure that even the 2 other ones, like the non-pick nominees, still feel the encouragement and fun, and joy, and commitment from all the other participants and the mentor that they have received in the Forcast forum and the months leading to it. But of course, it's still... most of them really want to become the mentee and to receive more, suggestions and more production links. In some cases, we even had nominees that didn't even become a mentee, because in one case, the project was ready by the time the mentor had to pick. So this artist really managed to produce an extremely complex video work. And after these first 4 months of the pre-mentorship, let's say, Forcast forum, the work was done. It was an incredibly stunning work. It was really fantastic. It was just ready, There was nothing more to do, nothing more to discuss. And so we all agreed, thank you very much. This was so much fun. And now goodbye, because we can't do anything with each other. It was totally fine. She even managed to sell it to a very important national arts collection, the German, the Federal Art Collection of the Republic of Germany in that case. Wow. And in another case, the designer really needed this first phase for their exchange of thoughts, and they didn't want to produce it yet. So they didn't want to bring it to the festival stage in the next phase, but they just needed this fresh input of feedback and questions, and so that is possible these first few months. And so this is also nice, right? So to know clear what you expect and what for.
Yeah, wow. And so then once they've selected their one of 3, they've got between, I suppose now really, or between July, August until March. Is that right?
March. It's 8 months basically. Yeah.
Okay.
And so once the mentor has picked their mentee, they have these 8 months that are really curated and organized very individually. So it's sometimes Zooming a lot or sending emails to each other. But we also organize one trip that they may do together. It is called the Work Stay. It's really like a short-term residency somewhere in an interesting or inspiring or useful environment, like hosted by an arts institution or a university or in the middle of an interesting cultural context where mentor and mentee can focus really on project development and also, attend interesting events or meet fellow creatives and work on the mentee's project together.
Yeah, amazing. Have there been any kind of long-term relationships and collaborations that have grown out of the process?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for example, I don't know whether she was edition 3 or she was really very early, maybe edition 2 even. So one of our former mentees basically found the whole thing so exciting and all the people participating, I mean, not all of them, but many of them, that she basically picked some of them being mentors, some of them fellow mentees, and just asked to collaborate. So she's a fashion designer and asked one of the architects to do her light design, for example, and she offered another mentor, in that case a choreographer, to do his costumes, or I think he approached her. And so there have been all kinds of ongoing collaborations that didn't necessarily start then, right? It's rather about catching an interest and finding out what the other person does. And then after a while, there were these collaborations growing.
Yeah, amazing. That's really nice. I noticed, or I saw recently, and I think when we met a few months ago, this wasn't announced, but there's a program coming up called Forcast Condensed, which is part of Berlin Science Week. So how does that work? It's like a shorter version of the program, or?
Yes, exactly. Basically, we found out over the years that what we have been doing for quite a while, could also be done in different ways with slight variations, like maybe with certain focuses regarding certain questions or practices, which is housing the human and driving the human, for example, focusing on the climate crisis and strategies for a sustainable way of coexisting on the planet. Also with other species, of course. And Forecast Condensed is kind of a faster and obviously more condensed version of the whole program of the Forecast mentorship. So basically, all the steps and all the commitments of Forecast happens there. So people apply with a project idea that they have already somewhat developed, but that is working yet, or that they need a certain feedback or help for. And then if selected, they get a very condensed form of mentorship with 4 mentors. So it's kind of a cohort of 4 people, usually an interesting mix of different backgrounds and practices, of course, these 4, giving feedback, asking questions, and giving some advice how to move forward. So the first phase of these workshops is the creatives explaining what they're struggling with, what they want to achieve, what's not working yet. The second phase is the mentors giving feedback and asking questions and having some ideas of how to handle it. And the third phase is a general discussion with everybody present. So we always invite a general audience, and also everybody that has applied with an own proposal also is invited to participate. So it's a very flexible and easy way of discussing ideas and trying to help. But surprisingly, it is very efficient and people really get a lot out of it. Although usually it's only half an hour per project. We had some variations when we had a little bit more time. Sometimes we had even less time per project, depending on how many people applied and how many people urgently wanted to get this kind of feedback. But it generally works. So all these variations have been extremely successful.
Oh, you've done it before? This isn't the first time?
Yeah, actually, the first time was in Slovenia at a design festival, then at the Goethe Institute in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, then at another Goethe Institute in Kigali in Rwanda in Central Africa. Then we did it together with the Architecture Triennale in Lisbon, Portugal. We did a Bezalel Academy in Jerusalem. Maybe I'm forgetting one version even. And now Science Week is the first time that we do it in Berlin.
That's really good, because sometimes just getting that outside perspective makes everything come together. So yeah, that's really cool. we're quickly running out of time. So next year is the 10th edition of Forcast, which is a huge milestone. And I guess even just to see how the platform, the festival, the mentorship has grown. I think I saw that this year you had 1,150 applications from 113 countries, which apparently was double from last year.
Yeah.
So it's already like, it's getting bigger and bigger. Do you have anything that you can reveal about the 10th edition next year in 2025?
So I would never reveal the cohort of mentors, of course, because that is the excitement in January when we do the website relaunch and so on. The open call goes public. But I have received some really exciting confirmations by extremely important people. So I can't believe what's happening. So I think 10th edition will be really very, very rewarding and exciting. What we also want to do is kind of celebrate this anniversary by looking in the future, of course, as Forcast promises. And so we would also kind of follow up on certain strands that we have already started before, but haven't shown so much. For example, the alumni network that we have built. So in edition 10, for the first time, we will invite a former mentee to become mentor. So slowly we will include more and more former mentees in different roles. So this alumni network becomes more and more practical, and also the roles are changing more. For us, an alumni is either mentor or mentee or nominee. We don't see any difference there. So this will be one of the things to start for the next 10 editions starting next year.
Oh, exciting. I know when I met you and heard about or learned more about it, I was really inspired. I was like, oh, I would love to do something like this. This is incredible. Yeah. But for people listening that would like to take part, how is the best way for them to keep up to date with when the applications come out and all that kind of thing?
So on one hand, of course, we are on social media like on Instagram and on Facebook and so forth. One may register for a newsletter, which is not a random, super frequent use newsletter, I can promise. And generally, the open call will always be in January. And I think it makes sense to look out for the 6 mentorship fields. If you decide to apply, I would always recommend to keep in mind why exactly do you want to work with this person? What could they contribute? Why? Where do you see interesting parallels or interesting contradictions even? Because it's really a very personal process and also a very personal decision. And don't try to adapt. That is also a recommendation. Don't try to squeeze your imagination or your ambition into anybody's expectations, because there aren't any. We are really so curious and so passive in that sense. We really want to learn what these guys want to do. And we don't anticipate anything that we want to fulfill, any formats or processes that we have already designed. Not at all.
I guess the connection with the other person and the relationship that you can establish. And if you develop chemistry with them, you're both going to realize the best out of the mentor-mentee relationship.
The mentors, really, that's always the case. The mentors want to be needed. It's really important for them that they can contribute. It's not just about production, so showing stuff. It's really about this exchange that is mutual and really rewarding for both sides.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Freo Majer, for taking the time that we could record this again between Perth and Berlin this time. I hope I can join next year for the 10th anniversary because it looks really exciting. Super. And hopefully I can be there to celebrate with you all.
That'll be fantastic. Forward to it.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Freo Majer. Details of Forcast platform are included in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to the newsletter so you know when to apply for the next mentorship round. As Freo mentioned, this is typically in January, however the newsletter ensures you don't forget. As mentioned at the top of the program, please subscribe to Subtext, Discourse, Art World podcasts wherever you consume your podcasts, or go on better and leave a rating and review of the show. Sharing with your friends who would also find this interesting helps promote the people I interview and the projects they're involved with. You can also find me on social media. Blue Sky is getting better every week, but of course I'm also on the usual suspects like Instagram and Threads. Just check my link in bio in the show notes. That's all for now. Thanks again for tuning in. My name's Michael Dooney, and you've been listening to Subtext and Discourse.